Bruce, for our audience that just obviously doesn't know, I know you get this question every single time in an interview. Do you mind just telling us how you reconnected with your half brother, Michael Buffer?
Well, in a really long story cut short, I never knew I had a half brother, as you know. And when he became famous on TV and came out, during the heyday of boxing, when Mike Tyson was bringing boxing back as the water cooler conversation on a Monday morning, the way the UFC is today, I was raised around the boxing world. I was watching boxing right out of the womb, and it was a big thing with my family to watch Tuesday night fights and uh, uh, wide world of sports and all that. We were always into boxing, and I boxed and I started martial arts when I was 12, and competed, fought the whole bit. And basically, when Michael came out, here comes this debonair James Bond looking individual changing the world of announcing and boxing with his grand voice and his trademark phrase, or his phrase, "Let's get ready to rumble." And I became a big fan. But when they put his name on the screen, it's like, wow, Buffer. I was in I owned telemarketing companies in my 20s. And before the internet, we had every phone book in the United States. And as a natural thing, you look in the phone book to see if your last name's in there. I never saw my last name in any phone book. So when I saw the name on the screen, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. He's really handsome. It's not like we look alike, but it's like, whoa, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And intrigued by his job and the whole mystique of the whole thing. So I started calling Don King's offices, Bob Arum's offices, and finding out information on him. And people would walk up to me and say, "Hey, is that your brother, the guy that goes, 'Let's get ready to rumble'?" And I go, "No, my brother's Brian, who I grew up with and
Mm-hmm.
is my brother." So Michael is my half brother. And the way I found out is I was driving with my dad, and I used to ask him about the guy. But one time I really got firm. I said, "Dad, everybody's coming up to me. Do you have any idea who this guy is?" And he said, "I think that's your brother." And he told me the story about how he was married during World War II and at 20 years old, and went overseas, and a divorce ensued when he came back, and a child was born during that short period they were married. And it's just one of those things. I don't look down on my dad for it. It's one of those things that happened. And Michael was raised by foster parents under the name of Huber. But when he went in the Army at 20, they never formally adopted him or changed his birth certificate. So he's Michael Buffer. And they said, "No, you're not Michael Huber, you're Michael Buffer." Had that not happened, our paths would have never crossed. And he was doing a fight out here in LA at a small place called the Reseda Country Club. And my brother Brian and I had him call, suggested he call and leave a message. And he did. And Michael called him back. They got together for lunch and turned out to be his son. And then we met and got along great. 4 years later, I sold two companies. I was making incredible money and beach house, living the 2.5 men lifestyle minus the alcoholism. And I just was burned out on what I was doing. And I gave everything up to take over and be his manager and his partner, and trademark the phrase properly, and told him I'd put him in everywhere in sports and entertainment, make movies, TV, toys, films, you name it, all based and licensing. Let's get ready to rumble and this, that, and the other. He's like, "How are you going to do all that?" I go, "I don't know." I'm not sure. But if I'm going to give all this up, I'll figure it out. And that was 30 some years ago.
Right. Yeah. And so then it sounds like you're managing him. And then this is when you kind of transition into your own person into the UFC, correct? Is that how
Well, I
the
wanted to
timeline's
become
at?
an announcer. I wanted to announce. I had interest in announcing boxing, but it was a confliction of interest, and there's no money in it. He's the only one really making any money.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "That's okay. Something else will come along." And then when the UFC came along, I got him in the UFC for 3 shows, and I had to pull him because of a big contract with WCW Wrestling. And I don't think it could have continued at the pace the UFC was going. And it took me a year and a half, and I worked my way into the UFC and started at Bayamon, Puerto Rico, doing the prelims at UFC 8.
And how much maybe can you credit the show Friends for landing this dream job?
That gave me a lot of bartering power, because when the owner, Robert Myers at the time, called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to co-star on Friends?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." He
Yeah.
goes, "Well, we're doing a show with them. They're using a voiceover, but they want the real announcer."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Great." So they sent Warner Brothers sent a runner down to get audio and tape. They called me up, said they're rehearsing all day Tuesday, be on the set at 6 in the morning,
Uh-huh.
film all day Wednesday. I called the owner up and I said, "I need to meet you, talk to you while you're there." So we talked, and I basically told him, I said, "I feel like a girl waiting to be asked to go to the prom.
Yeah.
I've done everything. I've flown into New York. I've done everything I can to convince you that you need a buffer in the octagon. I've got the media contacts you don't have. People are scared of you. I can get you on shows like Jay Leno and a bunch of other things that I, did, that they pay PR people hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it. I did it all for free because I wanted to help build the brand. I said, let me be the announcer. I will help you build the brand."
Right.
And, but this is the last time I'm going to ask it. And he agreed, and we came to terms. And that was like, I'm a big poker player. That's like the best poker hand I ever played in my life.
Yeah, I was